there, that everybody can read it, and we know what's happening.
The problem with that is things come up where they can't. I guess I'm thinking of Director Johnson and what he's got on his plate, where it may be his turn, but he really has enough that he can't do it. I don't know if it would work the way you would like it to work. I understand what you're saying. I don't see how it's too difficult to be able to have someone, if they want to do it, because there is work to it. I mean, it's not just like
There's a lot of work.
You sit there and do nothing. I've done it a couple of times, so has Connie, and I'm just wondering if it's worth all that effort. Both would work, but I think we're going to have a situation where someone's up and they're not going to be able to do it. So
Case in point, to me, actually, Wayne and I switched positions because of the surgery that I had, that I felt would be detrimental for me to move into that position. So he went from me being as the president last year to Wayne taking that over. And it worked without a switch. It worked without a problem. And we can always take advantage of whatever's happened. There's play in both of these situations. Like with Greg, we know that he's teaching. I was in that same situation for several years, and it worked out. It wasn't a problem. But we have some way to track this, and there's going to be problems, little tiny problems, but nothing that could be overcome. And that ensures that you have a process where everybody can get in that line, take advantage of it, and, you know, serve the patrons of our utility. I think this is a fair and equitable way to do it.
So do you have a suggested lineup now?
No, but I have an idea. For example, we went back and I asked Kathy to go back over the last 3 years or period of time. And we know that Roger was the voting delegate last year, okay? And the one that has actually the least amount is Greg, but it's going to be hard for you unless you can work that out in your schedule to get involved.
not likely.
Yeah, and I understand that, because I said I was there too. And you just have to deal with it. And I think the next up to be the voting delegate should be Connie, because Connie, I don't think, has ever been voting delegate, right?
I don't think so.
I thought you
I've
were
been an
delegate
alternate.
before me.
Then
Alternate.
alternate.
Oh,
Okay, and we used to have 2 voting delegates and 2 alternates, or at least 1 alternate on OPPA. And then the board decided that's too many. So we went down from 2 to 1. And so we made those changes at the OPUDA, and that's worked out very well for us. But that'd be my recommendation, as Connie would be the voting delegate, and you could be the alternate.
One thing you might want to keep in mind is that you've got a possibility in 2023 of having 2 new board members. We don't know whether they're going to be employed or retired. Given the cross-section of people in this community, you probably got to assume at least one of them is going to be employed, maybe both of them. One of the things and then you hypothetically could end up with only 2 board members being able to serve in that capacity,
Right.
just because they don't have the kind of flexibility at the time. So I think the philosophy of having as many board members involved in official positions in statewide organizations like this is really important. I think it's educational for you. I think it's beneficial to the board to have you be there. I worry a little bit, Howard, about setting up a structure that may not work just because of and instead take a philosophy the board adopt, not formally, but just say our philosophy is we're gonna rotate and we're gonna get people involved that can be involved. And we're not gonna have people serve more than, not have people serve 2 terms in a row.
Consecutive.
Yeah, consecutively. I think that kind of can get you to the same place you are,
Sure.
but I think if you really adopt a policy which becomes unworkable because of the nature of the board, I don't think you've done any favor to yourself when this board seems to work so positively together in terms of trying to get everybody involved. That I guess I think taking the position that it's my philosophy as the president, I think should be the philosophy of the board, that we're not gonna have back-to-back voting members of any organization, as long as it's possible to do that. You could end up with 4 board members who are employed.
Yeah, and that's a great point, because you know that this is my last year. I'm not gonna, period. You know, I'm done, tired, it's been great, but, you know, I just need for my own sanity. You know, I wanna do other kinds of things. And so, you know, that's a great point. We're gonna have another new board member, and hopefully Greg comes to the point where he can, you know, get more involved than he should, because he's a good member, it's gonna be a better member as he gets more experience. So any way we can work it out, I think that's important to keep that revolving, the rotation, with the existing board members we have. But we need to make sure it's fair and equitable for everybody.
I don't have a problem with that. I think you're making too much to do and too much work out of something that's not necessary. You're the president, you can appoint the voting member and the alternate. And, you know, I thought that was my job, because Kathy had said something about we needed to have it by the December meeting. So I took the bull by the horns and made an appointment. If that's
Made
not the
history.
way- that's not the way it's done, you're president now, you can make an appointment.
And that was a glitch, because that was an error.
That was an error, Wayne. I'm so sorry, yes.
So we've always appointed, the incoming president always appoints for that year, not the outgoing, because you actually appointed 2 different times at the same year.
Well, some people just have talent. So pick your appointment.
But anyway, I think this is a point of discussion that we needed to have.
Yeah, I agree with 2 things. One, I agree with your potential vote on it, but I also agree with Jim's presentation on rotation versus just a set deal, because it gives us some flexibility and options, and we don't have to do it. And I think that's a good thing to do.
Yeah, and I probably need to make a clarification, because I didn't want to set things to the point where you couldn't manipulate or change, such as a change with me and you know, when I had the surgery and stuff. So we always need to be flexible. So I just think that, I'll go ahead and make those designations, and we'll just move on and keeping all the stuff that we talked about in mind, because I think the more you discuss stuff, the better it works out. Okay, so I will designate Connie as the voting delegate and Wayne as the alternate.
Okay.
Good, thank you for the discussion. Comment period. Roger, any comments?
I believe we received any public comments.
Okay, good, thank you. Request for additions or deletions to the agenda. Any of those items? Nothing? Okay, let's move on to old business. This is consideration and adoption of Ordinance 01/2022, establishing and fixing the boundaries for 5 subdivisions for election of board of directors from the Northern Wasco County People Utility District pursuant to ORS 261450(2). Questions, comments? This is kind of a boondoggle.
It feels like it needs some explanation because you guys just did this again last month. So short backstory, every 10 years, there's a census. And as part of the outcome of that census is ensuring that the subdivisions of our district are equally represented. So we worked with the county and updated to make it fair and equitable, the best and even best we could with the residences and voting members. And then we submitted it and you guys approved it. And then we got some more information back from the county where they are making the request, because the way the lines were drawn would have caused the county to have some special ballots in a few of those areas that moved. So maybe whether it's one side of the street or the other, you would have maybe the same county commissioner, but a different PUD subdivision director. So it was kind of for the ease of the voting public to redraw, move those lines a little bit, and then the county took it upon themselves at our request to handle the legal descriptions. I definitely want to thank Kathy and Jake Kellogg, engineering staff, that really kind of bore the brunt of this. That it was essentially as a good steward and good neighbor policy with the county to make the ballots easier to distribute. Didn't necessarily impact any of you or your the people that you represent. It's still as even as it can be.
That means I now have to memorize a whole new series of descriptions.
Well, if you memorize it, we can have a conversation about that. Respectfully.
Mr. Foster, anything to add to that?
No, I looked at it and they've run it by me as this process has gone on, and I think it's, I would recommend that the board approve it.
Do we need a motion, Mr. President?
We need a motion. Yes, it's right in front of us. Anyone care to do that?
I will make a motion that we accept the boundary changes.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Any other questions or discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by yes.
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 Yes. You were yes, Greg. You were a quiet yes.
Thick mask.
Okay, so that is 5-0. And we will move on to the consent agenda.
Mr. President,
Yeah.
one question on, before I would make a motion to accept it, other than I would like to hear about the outage reports from the last storm on the site. That could be from the president's report or someone else.
I think that's planned, isn't it?
It is? Okay, then I would make a motion to accept it. That's it.
Roger made the motion to accept the consent agenda as it is.
Second.
Second. Wayne. Okay. Any other comments? Hearing none, all in favor signify by yes.
Yes.
That's a 5-0. Okay. Let's move on to the special report. Jeff, are you there? Jeff Griffin.
I am. Thank you very much.
Hey, we're glad that you did not drive down the gorge or up the gorge.
So am I. Thank you.
Yeah.
This is a first. We love being there, and there were some extenuating circumstances why it was difficult to be there today.
So we're just gonna turn this over to you and take charge and do whatever you need to do.
All righty. Can you see my shared screen?
It's a little small.
Let me walk through it if I can and try to make it easy for you if that's possible. In your packet, there should be a review and a comparison of last year to this year. And this will be a fun one to go through and bring everyone up to date. As you know, once a year we do a best practices training that gets us 2% credit. And I'll be working with Roger and Harvey to determine what class you want this year. SDO has expanded our offering to 8 different classes. For the board, as you know, SDO writes a very broad liability policy. Oregon public entities are subject to a tort law known as Tort 30.260 to 30.300. It protects us, it gives us some immunities, but it doesn't cover everything. Your policy through SDAO does address the tort law. We've added in also coverages for some of the federal situations, some of the employment practices, hiring, firing, civil rights types activities. Most any claim that would come against you would come as a tort claim and go into an Oregon court. Federal claims, of course, would go into a federal court. And that's one of the reasons why we have the $10 million limit. Again, federal court would be limited pretty much to employment issues and a thing called false arrest. SDO writes a great policy for you. No policy covers everything. And I would coach the board members, intentional acts would be something that would be excluded. So if in the heat of the moment at a board meeting, one of the board members removed a civilian's teeth with their fist, this would probably not be a covered peril. It also doesn't cover your workers' compensation. That's covered under a separate policy. But overall, SDO does a great job, provide very broad coverages. They also do a couple of things that we really like. They do a pre-loss legal, which helps get us in front of the power curve with lawsuits, and hopefully, and has been very successful in the past, eliminates a lot of lawsuits just by handling things appropriately before they become a lawsuit. SEO also adds in some fringe coverages, some ethics coverage, some OSHA type coverages. They can't pay your fines legally, but they can defend you, and they do a great job there. As we scroll down, I love their property form. Their property form has been expanded to pick up some unusual things, some law and ordinance, some debris removal. They write a very broad policy. The thing I really love about their policy is they write a true blanket. And as you've watched the last few years, costs have escalated for building just through the roof. It's very hard to stay on top of how quickly steel and concrete and all of our components are going up in cost. The blanket makes it so that we're not going to be penalized per location. The blanket means that we have one total limit for any one loss, and that's a great thing. I really like that about special districts. We have crime coverage in here. Yes, sir.
Quick question on the law and ordinances. Are we getting a percent on that, or is it a flat amount? Is that something that we can increase?
We can look at increasing it. Normally they do not increase it, but I believe it's a flat amount, a percent up to, and it's on this sheet if I can find it for you. Enforcement of the government, increase in construction law and ordinance, 5 million.
Okay, because that's one of those sneaky little things that you can be short on the money and not realize it till it's too late.
Absolutely. And if you, for agents who don't put in that law and ordinance, every year our code's changing, whether it's glass in your building from thermopane to e-glass, whatever, and it adds up extremely quickly. And that's why it's important that we have, and this law and ordinance is 25% of the loss or up to 5 million per event. And then also the debris removal, which people don't realize, but when we lose a building or lose a structure, it's extremely expensive. A lot of that's carcinogenic. We've got to essentially bag it and truck it out to Arlington to dispose of it. So the collateral costs on a lost building, lost structure, sometimes is as much as 20–30% of the total loss. It adds up very, very quickly. Did I address that adequately?
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Roger. So we have crime coverage under ORS 297. We're required to have coverage for our revenue, because we're a public entity, your policy, and ironically, the law is written very poorly. Initially, it was the Secretary Treasurer of the board, which is ironically the only person I've ever not had a claim with. We write this so that it's a full, faithful performance. Every employee is under this shield. Now, keep in mind, crime is not insurance. This is actually a different type of relationship. This is a duty for the company to pay up front, but they will pursue the party that was involved in the misdeeds. So if we have an employee that steals, the insurance company will pay, but then go after that employee. So this is different than insurance, but it is required by the state, and currently you operate with about $250,000 of coverage.
Yeah, quick question on that. Do they have to be convicted, or is that going to pay any?
Yes, yes, they will pay once we identify the loss. It's difficult to pick a limit. We don't like to see any public entity in Oregon under $100,000, and the reason is SDAO's application requires that we meet best practices in accounting, a separation of duties. The people that write the checks aren't the ones that sign the checks, aren't the ones that balance the books. You meet and exceed all accounting best practices. Your limit is at $250,000. We see a few public entities have higher limits. What you do and how you handle your money, I think, is impeccable. I'm not concerned about that limit. And if you want quotes for higher limits downstream, let us know, and we're always happy to do that. This sheet is my favorite sheet, and I'm hoping this is in your packet, but I'm hoping that it's large enough that you can go through it with me. On the far left-hand side was the actual premium for 2021, which totaled $127,494. We wrote a budget projection letter to you in February and said our best guess with where reinsurance is going, plan on a 12 to a 15% rate change. Reinsurance, SDAO, like most insurance companies, buy reinsurance, so it spreads the loss. Because of the large number of disasters that have occurred, wildland fire and hurricanes, reinsurance has been going through the roof the last few years. In November, SDAO wrote their membership and said, we have secured reinsurance for next year, and the rates are up 12%. So the budget projection letter was spot on to your staff, your management team, and the practices that you have. In your case, the average SDAO member saw a 12% increase in rates. You saw a 3.76% rate change. Our renewal application is a little more extensive than what SDAO asked for. We asked questions that they'd like to ask, but don't. It helps us battle those rates and show SDAO that you are a high performer, we refer to it, as far as risk management and safety. And what this 3.76% says is you're doing everything right. Now, keep in mind, power right now to insure is a real challenge. Each of you are aware of what's happened in California with PGE. You're aware of the Oregon losses. You're seeing lawsuits there with EWEB and one of the co-ops. Insurance companies and reinsurers are panicked about power and wildland fire in particular. And one of the things I want to thank you and suggest that is so important that you do is you're very actively involved, not just involved, but leading OPUDA with all that you do. Several months ago, in the middle of an OPUDA meeting, I received a text from Frank Stratton, the head of special districts, and he informed us that he was in the middle of negotiating reinsurance, and he needed policies for each of the OPUDA members showing that they were addressing the wildland fire issue. I brought it up at the first of the meeting. Immediately after he texted me, And by the end of the meeting, and we're talking an hour and a half later, every member of OPUDA had sent in their policy. We sent it to Frank. Frank was overwhelmed that we were able to respond that quickly. Those are the things that make a difference in your rates. I do want to say that you are leading with being involved with ERM, Enterprise Risk Management, as well as embracing what's called just culture and continuous improvement. The reason that your rate stayed low is all the things that you're doing and you're doing them right. I do want to point out that your premium did increase because our exposure units increased. There was an increase of about $6,700, and you'll see that on the next to the last column, because our personnel services and our materials and services both went up. Materials and services, we added $1 million in exposure units there, and personnel services went up about $235,000. That represented an increase of about $6,700. That is just a fact of doing business. As you expand those items, that does increase your premium. Also note that we increased your property by about $2.267 million, $2,226,000 in value. That increased your premium by $8,000. Those are the two things that really had an impact on your annualized premium. I'm going to tell you what we're going to do to help reduce that in just a moment. Overall, what you saw was a rate change of 3.76%, an overall change in your premium of 15%. Almost all of that, the vast majority of that, was the fact that it costs more to rebuild, and material and services have gone up. I do want to point out 4% of that was a change in best practices. Normally, SDAO will allow up to 10%. You always get all 10%. That's 5 different categories for 2%. In 2021, they allowed you the opportunity to do some internal management items. You took advantage of that. It gave us an additional 4% credit. We can only get that once. We got that last year. So in comparing this year to last year, there was a 4% change, totally outside of your control and best practices. With all of that said, we know from the early results with the rates and working with SDAO that the credits are better for higher deductibles than they have been in the past. I am going to be recommending that we raise our vehicle deductibles up. In the past, the rates were so low. I think your total auto physical damage is about $9,000 for all of your vehicles. It did not make sense to have higher deductibles. The savings was too small. This year, it's going to result in about a $900 reduction in auto physical damage. We're also, I believe, going to recommend a higher deductible on property. We have the quote request into SDAO. I do not have it back yet, but I believe we're going to recommend that we go up from $1,000, most likely to $2,500, and that's going to save enough to have a couple of claims a year. Those two things will reduce your premium down several $1,000s. I need to get the hard numbers in to confirm them and work with Harvey on that. But those two things, I think, will make a significant savings. The important thing for you to note, rate changes, you significantly outperformed your contemporaries with special districts at a 3.76%, significantly under other public entities. Most of the change that you saw was change in what we call exposure units, payroll, building values, and so forth. Are there questions about this year comparing to last year and where we're headed in the near future? Hearing none, I would like to throw a few things out to you. We will be back in touch with the deductibles to let you know what it saves us, but those are going to make more sense. I do want to point out supply chain is becoming a major, major problem. Earlier this year, several months ago, we picked up that most unique pieces of equipment, like a bucket truck, the extension in time to build went from about a year to 2 years. And I'm not seeing that that's going to change for some time to come. Any unique equipment or parts, just expect long delays. And what I want to coach the board is, don't be surprised if when you let bids, the contractors now are material plus rather than a hardwired number. It's going to make it harder and harder for you to budget. Don't be surprised if you see changes in how long it takes to build and cost to build, and just be patient with staff as they continue to make this a better and better public service that we give our users. Do watch supply chain. It's only getting worse day by day, and we hope that that changes in the near future. Wildland fire, we're working with Frank on some options there, but I want the board to understand that your staff is doing everything they can to minimize our liability exposure there, but also our property loss exposure. The big things that special districts are looking at this year are auto, cyber liability, and employment law. Auto, we're working with your staff on. You have good practices in place. We're going to continue to try to enhance those, do everything we can to avoid auto losses. STO is watching that very, very closely. They've had a spike in auto claims over this last year. Cyber is cyber. It's right now in a full meltdown across the country because of the number of attacks and how sophisticated they've become. They're really targeting public entities because of freedom of information and how easy it is to get data from you, from your own websites and from your own social media. We'll continue to watch that and work with you on that. The one that concerns me the most for our employees is the employment issue, employment law, not just hiring and firing today, but how civilians are treating our employees. For whatever reason, public employees are in the crosshairs of civilians. And I don't know if you've noticed in your area or not, but as we travel around the Northwest, public employees are being singled out and essentially bullied by civilians like we've never seen before. Whether it's somebody out reading a meter or delivering a bill or trying to do a hookup or unhooking a user, civilians are angry. And, you know, I long for the day when we get past this time and we get back to normal. But just coaching you and our employees to be extra safe, be aware of their surroundings, and just be aware that civilians today are very confrontational. And our concern is not just for the safety of our employees, but potentially allegations made against our employees that they've done something wrong. So we're very aware of that. I believe that we'll be working with your staff to do some training and better prepare our staff so that either they're not injured, but also that we're not brought into a lawsuit. I covered an awful lot of ground very quickly. I promised to keep it short tonight, especially with the weather. I think our next trip up will be doing some kind of training, but I don't want to close out tonight without addressing any questions that you have. What questions do you have that I can help you with or address moving forward? So you should know that most insurance is sold on a commission basis. We left that a number of years ago, and we're on a fee basis. So as your premiums change, that doesn't mean that our revenue will change. We don't think that that's appropriate. Questions I can address?
Anybody? Raj?
Appreciate the support as always, Jeff. You're always at the other end of the phone, and I know we call regularly, so thank you for that.
Roger, thank you.
Okay.
And I would be remiss if I didn't thank all of your staff and the board for their direction. And do watch for your longevity credit of about $10,670.
Also, Jeff, thank you very much for helping us get the cyber insurance with covered as well.
Our pleasure. And Roger, thank you for all of your help and always being available for us, both Rogers. We really appreciate it. And we appreciate your leadership with OPUDA and power throughout the Northwest.
Okay, well, thank you, Jeff. Normally, I wish you would be here, but I don't wish you were here tonight especially. And I hope that you're a fast healer, and we appreciate all the things you do for us.
Thank you so much. It's an honor to serve you.
Take care.
Be safe.
Okay, moving on. Division updates, engineering / operations, IT.
So Jeff Teal is gonna remote in from, parts unknown. Feel free to turn your camera on.
Yeah, I'm turning on right now. Sorry for the poor lighting in the Hilton here. Can you guys hear me okay?
You can.
Okay, I was going to share my screen. I just had a little snafu, so I'm going to ask Sarah if she can do it on my behalf. I bet you she can do it quicker than I can. Thank you, Sarah. Okay, please just go ahead to the next slide. So I'm going to give you a brief overview tonight.
Your audio dropped.
That's a short meeting.
That's real short.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes. Unmute again.
Okay,
There you
thank you. Sorry. Technical difficulties. So I'll be really brief here. On the engineering and operations side, the things I want to highlight mostly are the outages that Director Howe brought up earlier. However, we are currently recruiting for a journeyman lineman. Anthony, one of our actually relatively newer hires from a couple of years ago, he and his family are moving, and so we've got to replace him, and Kara's got a position open for that right now. We're also beginning to work on 2022 capital projects. I just highlighted a couple right there. The silo feeder rebuild from Old Mooney Road to the Deschutes. And then I've released an RFP for SCADA design services, and expect proposals back on that by the end of the month. And now, next, I'd like to talk about the outage response from December 20th. So Sarah, if you could please move forward a slide. So on December 20th, actually, I think it started the night of December 19th. We had our first outage, but it ended up resulting in basically 16 distinct outages across the territory, and a total of about 500 customers. I just have some of the areas, not all 16 of them, right here on the list, but you can, as anyone who's familiar with the area, which is all of you, more so than I, will recognize that it's scattered all over the place. And really the cause was unusually heavy, wet snow. Some components in our system did not hold up well to that, particularly old copper wire. So sometimes we had down lines. Sometimes it was just something where the snow falls off the line, and then the line starts moving, and perhaps contacts something else, and a fuse was blown. And so there was a lot of work for our folks, because they were stretched all across the territory, as I mentioned, and we can only kind of do one or two things at a time based on our crew size. And so we decided a few hours into it to reach out to a contractor we've used in the past to get some contract line crew support in. And so we did do that. We called Magnum, and they were very responsive and got here and really helped us out. So I have some additional information on the outages in these next slides. So Sarah, could you please go to the next slide? Okay, so I just wanted to summarize basically the causes for all the outages, and they fit neatly into three categories. So we either had down lines in 7 cases, or just a weather-related blown fuse in 6 cases, and then in 3 cases we had some other sort of equipment failure. Sarah, next slide, please. And this is a similar graph or a chart that shows how many customers were affected by each of those outage types that I just mentioned. So you can see the vast majority, 388 of the 500 customers were affected by down lines, whereas fewer were affected by the other two causes. Next slide, please, Sarah. So I've got some photos. They're going to be hard to see on that screen you've got there, and I've tried my best to do some circling, but this is a photo out near Womack that kept the town of Womack offline for quite a while. A line pulled free from its connector at the pole there and contacted the line below it, and that's not ever good. And this was about a 1 mile hike uphill for our folks to be able to get in there and just to identify it. This was after probably 24 hours of work already from some of these guys. And then we had to get materials in there, and I'll just say it was really helpful to have all the equipment that we're able to have. The ATV, the side-by-side, was extremely helpful in being able to get these materials into remote places like this. Next slide. This one's even more difficult to see. I believe this one Nathan in the room there took, and he can nod or shake his head, but I believe this is out off of East 10th, that general area, Old Duffer Road area. And again, we have another line down. I've got it circled on the ground and kind of hanging there. Next slide, Sarah. And one of the bigger outages, well, one of the more significant outages, I guess I would say, was caused by a failure in a portion of our 69 kV transmission line between Duffer and Ty Valley. The middle phase broke, as you can see on the right-hand photo. It's just kind of hanging there, and the left-hand photo just shows that there's only 2 lines overhead. That's not good. It's not a DC line. It's AC. We need all three lines, and so we had to. Once we identified that this was what the problem was, we had to do some switching to feed Ty Valley from Maupin. And then we went back to fix this the next day with the assistance of the Magnum crew that I mentioned before. Next slide, please, Sarah. Okay, we don't have a lot of glamour photos, unfortunately. That's something we're going to change. At the bottom of my list here, this is my takeaways list. We have some improvements that and one of those is going to be to get some better photos so folks at home watching on Facebook or wherever we're doing updates have an idea what we're up against a little bit better. But on the positive side, and there were a lot of positives, we had 0 outages that were related to trees. And there were tree limbs falling, but they weren't falling on our lines. And Steve also mentioned, there were several of us out in the field trying to assess the situation while the crew was working at one particular location, and he pointed out how easy it was to be able to look down our lines and get good sight in all the lines because the trees are trimmed back so well, and then obviously, like I said, no tree related outages. So really happy with the vegetation management program and its impact on reliability. However, there still is aging infrastructure in the system because, as I mentioned, we had 16 outages and 500 customers out, and a lot of that was due to down lines, the majority of which was old copper that needs to be replaced, and it's on our list to replace. It's just we can't do it all at once. Overall, our response we thought was number one, it was safe and it was effective. We got everyone restored in a methodical fashion. The guys worked really hard and about as long as they could, but it was safe through and through. I mentioned the specialized equipment that we have. We've got binoculars in trucks. We've got the side-by-side. We've got a good radio system. We have a lot of tools to get things done effectively, and we appreciate that. And so one of the things we want to improve going forward that, we debriefed this a couple of days after the outage is just to improve some of our formality a little bit. I've talked a few times to you folks about the incident command structure that we're going to adopt and revising our emergency response plan And so those are things that will help going forward, just help us coordinate things a little bit better. And then the communications, especially externally, being able to provide our corporate services folks with the information they need to get out to our customers. We've also found a method of doing push notifications to affected customers, so they don't have to call in and find out what the prognosis is. We can selectively get just affected customers and send them update messages individually. So that's something we've just sort of discovered how to do, and we're writing the procedure for how to do that next time we have an outage, hopefully 7 years from now, of this magnitude. I think that's all I've got on the outage. Before I go forward, does anyone have any questions about the outages?
Doesn't look like it.
Okay. Actually, next slide, Sarah, please. This is one other outage photo I believe I threw in here. This was not related to the December 20th. This was 10 days later on December 30th. We lost the town of Dufur. This is probably difficult to see on your screen, but it looks like a bird dropped a big stick across the jumper, and just the right location to cause a line to ground fault. And it took a little bit to find that, because again, it was remote, but we did locate it and got Dufur restored. And now next slide, please, Sarah. Real briefly, I wanted to show you, if you could pull up that compliance dashboard, Sarah. Tom McGowan is, in addition to all of his joint use work, has been tasked with, he manages our compliance, our regulatory compliance program. And I've asked him to compile all the information about what we are responsible for complying with, due dates, things like that, and work with Justin to get it into a dashboard, because Justin's a dashboarding machine. And so this is the first release, hot off the press just a couple days ago. I haven't looked in detail at everything here, so there's still some of that to do, but it's a great tool. It's going to be hard for you to see on your screen. If I shared this myself, I was going to zoom in on different sections, but essentially it tells us what we have coming up, whether anything's overdue, and Justin has it set up so it can send out email notifications to those of us responsible for these things, make sure we don't fall behind on our regulatory compliance. So Sarah, can you please go back to the slide presentation? Thank you for the work on that, Justin. I really appreciate it. Yeah, just the final slide, please. I just want to give some IT updates. We have a new supervisor in IT. His name is Jason Pfister. He is on the call, and I won't make him turn his camera on or anything like that today, but we'll have him in for a board meeting one of these days and introduce you to him. He's highly competent and exceptionally detail oriented, and I'm super happy to have him in that role. And so we're recruiting for his former self, as I like to say, another IT technician to take his place. And along with that, one of the primary things that they're working on, following on what Jeff Griffin was talking about with cybersecurity coverage. We do have cybersecurity coverage that began this year, and along with that, there are some requirements that we have to meet in order for to basically just to comply with the insurer's requirements. And so our IT department is focusing heavily on that to make sure we meet those deadlines. And all those requirements are good things. They're things that we wanted to do anyhow, and this has given us some motivation to move it to the front of the top of the list. In addition, IT is working on just kind of starting to ramp up on their 2022 projects, and which includes some of these things I have on the list here: redundant firewalls, a cybersecurity appliance, some vulnerability vulnerability scanning, inventory management, and document management. So a lot more cybersecurity stuff there, vulnerability, security. That's really where our labor investment is, and in the IT department to make sure we have good coverage there. So I don't have anything more, but I do have a special guest star. Nathan is going to be there to present some updates on our LED lighting program. And so if you folks don't have any further questions for me, I'd like to introduce Nathan to you.
That's it. So Nathan Erickson is one of our electrical engineers, and he's got some lights to tell us about.
I have some fun materials for show and tell here as well. Hopefully I don't bore you with all the details of exterior lighting accessories.
If you want to, come up here so we can.
You want to stand or sit?
Fine.
Okay, I'll get this out of the way so people can see it.
All right. So over the last few years, actually, ever since I started here back in mid to late 2017, we've been doing an LED conversion project. So we're changing all the high pressure sodium lights to LED. So that's kind of the main focus here, and I'll get more into the details of the advantages and disadvantages of high pressure sodium versus LED. The other thing that we're also trying to do here is update PUD lighting to fall in compliance with dark sky standards. So this is kind of a program that the county's been pushing, especially in Dufur and Tybet, where all lights have to have a certain cutoff point and color temperature. And I'll get into that as well. And then the third part is adding reliability to our system. These high pressure sodium lights have a lifespan of about a year. So that's a lot of call outs for our crew, you know, lights out. And that's a whole lot more resources that are bringing into the warehouse. So by adding LED lights to our system, it's way fewer call outs for the crew. These things average about 10 years on their lifespan. At least that's what they're warranty is for. So we'll get into a little bit of nitty-gritty. I won't bore you too much on this. So high pressure sodium lights, I'm sure you're familiar with these. They give kind of that nice yellow glow when you're driving around town. And I have a couple of examples here as well. So what a high pressure sodium light is, you have this gas tube that's essentially filled with a sodium gas mixture. Now on the inside here, you have a ceramic tube that acts as kind of like it's a high pressure tank basically. And this holds an inert gas like neon or argon. And when current passes through the inside of this tube, it excites the electrons and creates a light blue. And kind of some of the byproducts of this are you get extra heat coming off of this light, which causes them to fail over time. One advantage of these lights, though, compared to the previous mercury vapor bulbs, is they are a lot more efficient. Not this one, but this light in particular is about a 70-watt power draw, whereas the mercury vapor bulbs used to be about 100. So the disadvantage is also the power draw and the lifespan. So because they pull about 70 watts, that's a good amount of power that they're pulling, but not as well as the lifespan. So if you guys want to take a look at these.
One or two.
And I believe those are failed bulbs. On some of them, you can kind of see where the canister burnt out. Sometimes they're a little more dramatic in how they burn out. You'll get a bulb back. It's just black as soot because the gas explodes a little bit on the inside and kills the bulb. So LED, now we're on the LEDs here. And LED lights have been around for a little bit, ever since diodes were introduced back in the 60s. Basically how LEDs work here is you have a piece of semiconductor that when you apply current to it, it emits light, and then that light is focused from a mirror through a lens. Kind of that plastic bit on top, this is a really basic LED, quite like what we're using. But you get that current applied across this little wire here, and that reflects back through there. And it's just a really nice low power draw solution. The equivalent of that 70-watt light in LED form is about 30 watts on our system. So it's over half the power draw. And you get 10 times the lifespan of these lights. Some of the disadvantages for LEDs though is the cost. They are much more expensive for an upfront cost. The 30-watt light, I believe, goes for about $350 on its own, but you're going to recoup that cost in power savings as well as crew time being called out to go fix these things. So dark sky compliance, this is what I was talking about the county really pushing towards. So see kind of in this example here, you got the shielding from the light, so there's no excess light leakage above the, I guess, your light bulb. And this allows for less light pollution overall. If you look at like the skyline of Los Angeles back in the 70s when high pressure sodium, you can't see anything up in the sky. You can only see the moon. So when they start introducing these cutoff fixtures here, you can start seeing stars again at night. And there are some byproducts of this as well. It actually helps with the wildlife in the area. Like bats, they rely on darkness. So they can hunt more effectively in them. Another thing that we're looking for is the color temperature for dark sky compliance. You want kind of it's a cooler temperature. You're never going to get that warm yellow glow from high pressure sodium lights, but you will get, it's a cooler bluish light, but it's still a very clean light. It's very hard to see kind of where the light stops and ends if you look at it. The other thing we're looking for here is timing of the light. So they have to turn off at dawn and dusk, and this is done through a photo cell that's attached to the top of the light. It plugs into the top, and it detects when the sun goes down, basically, and the sun comes back. They'll turn off the light. We average about 12 hours of darkness here, so that adds into the power savings on here. So we'll get into the types of lights that we have on our system. We'll start off with kind of our main street light here, the type 1. And you've seen these, they're on 10-foot arms. They're all over the city, sometimes 2-foot arms as well. This is kind of our typical street lighting bulb. It's not the long one that Foster has there. Yep, kind of a stubby one. One we're upgrading to is the Evalua 30-watt bulb. And it has about a 3,000 degree Kelvin color temperature. I have one here for example. I don't know if you want to pass this around. It's a little heavy. You got it. We'll stick it in the middle of the table here. So the deal with these guys, they have a lens in the middle of here that provides a nice distribution of light directly down onto the ground. They can be angled a little bit, and you can place them on a 10-foot or 2.5-foot. Another nice thing about these Evalua lights is they have a 10-year warranty on them. We have taken advantage of that a couple of times with just defective units. But another nice thing is they have firmware built into them. So you can connect to these lights over Bluetooth. Some of our line crew has an app on their phone. And you can adjust the brightness. You can dim these lights. We don't do it that often, just due to safety concerns on lighting up intersections. But you can also update firmware on these, and most of the time it fixes the problems with these lights. They have been incredibly reliable, and I really like what Evalua has done. So our second type street light, these are the 200 watt bulbs. That's the elongated one that Foster has there. And these are also, you see them on 10-foot arms. They're usually for lighting up major intersections or kind of storage yards. And what we're using here is a Cree Xsp Skylight. These are fairly recent on our system. We started stocking them about 3 years ago. And one of the nice advantages these have is they have a replaceable photo cell. So that Evalua light right there has an integrated photo cell. So if the photo cell goes bad, you have to trash the whole light. Whereas this one, you can just change out the photo cell and everything goes on the situation. And this guy has a power draw of about 54 watts compared to previously 200 watts. So it is massive reduction in energy usage. You'll also notice this has about 5 bulbs on it here, and that just adds to the brightness level that this light can provide. We still have the full cutoff fixture as well that maintained our sky compliance. The number one killer of these lights is heat. In theory, LEDs should last forever, but heat eventually does kill these things off. So as of about 2 years ago, we standardized our floodlights as well. We have a one-size-fits-all solution for these. We found that people don't really use the lower powered floodlights here. And you'll see here that our new floodlight resembles these guys are extremely bright. We basically only use them for lighting up storage yards, warehouses. We have put a few up in town for people that have ADA ramps or just need a large spectrum of light broadcasted. These guys can be angled as well. And you can see the difference here in power consumption. Normally they go up to about 400 watts. We don't have any more in our system. But the new LEDs will do 91. And it looks like we might be getting one soon. That's about 60 watts, I believe. So these are improving over time to become more efficient.
If you want to see a good example on the way home, you leave, check out our yard across the street. After the trailer was taken, I think we put up 4 out in the yard. So you can see it's like a landing strip when you come in the morning.
It is like the sun's out. So our newest kind of LED that we're adding to our system here is our period lights. And this one took a couple of years of testing just because of the unique fixtures that we use for period lights. And I want to take a little aside here. So these are an entirely different type of light, and it's been challenging for us. So they're called an induction light. They have this hollow bulb that just fits on top, and they're powered by an inductor right here. So it emits a current which excites the electrons in this hollow bulb here, which I believe it's filled with a mercury vapor. So when this gets, when the electrons are excited, it emits a light. This part almost never fails. This is the main thing that fails. But if you look at our period lights downtown, it's very rare that you see these out. They don't go out as often as the high pressure sodiums, but we'd like to start seeing a solution to changing these out because these bulbs and fixtures are becoming much difficult to source.
These are the existing.
Yeah, that's what we have out there right now. And that's what we're looking to change it. The period lights also have this strange, driver mechanism that needs to be changed out. It's very difficult to do a direct to LED conversion previously. What we have now is this luminaire kit from Hadco, and this is the same brand that makes our period light bulbs as well. So you kind of have a bit of vertical integration there. You know, as long as Hadco's supporting their bulbs, they should be supporting as well. And this is a very easy retrofit for our crew, just plugs directly in. Plug the wires in, you're good to go. We have a couple of these set up in the portion of downtown that's closed off, unfortunately, down by the cruise ship dock. But this guy, I believe, is a 69-watt light. The one that was passing around there is an 85. And hopefully, we'll start seeing more of these due to supply chain issues. We've been having a difficult time getting them in stock. So another kind of experimental light that we're playing with is this Evalua Omnimax light. So we've been playing around with this a bit for trying to find the correct term for it here, the ornamental lights. They have a metal hat on top of them. You'll see them up in the Columbia Heights neighborhood. And this is a very simple screw-in bulb type solution for those ornamental lights. We didn't choose to do these for the overhead lights just because the light distribution from this isn't great and it doesn't meet dark sky compliance in the regular fixtures. But in the ornamental light fixtures, this does meet the dark sky. It's a very easy retrofit, just standard screw. So as far as the progress goes, and I put a little light here, or a little picture here. So this is an LED portion of the street compared to a high pressure sodium section of the street here. You can just see a difference in the color temperature out there as well as the quality of light that you're receiving. So we'll do a little bit of the process for getting the service orders in. Please start with customer contact or someone out in the field. They'll call in either to our front office or the after hours line and say, hey, I got a light out here. Usually Ed will get an email from the call center saying, this light's out, it's in this neighborhood, this person called. A good portion of the time we have to follow up with the customer to figure out where the light is, just due to how the accounts are tied with these lights. Another method we've been doing is during kind of downtime for our crew when they're driving around town, they'll spot high pressure sodium lights, and they'll either take note of them or carry, like 10 of those Evalua lights on the truck and change it out. And it's been working really well for just finding lights that are off the beaten path. So once we find out where this light is, a service order is created usually at the front office, and it's forwarded to me. I'll verify where the light location is. I'll also verify which account this light is tied to. A lot of times someone will say, hey, the light over at like Safeway is out. Most of the time, that's a city light, so I have to go through the city account. More times than not, it ends up service order. So once service order is made up, forward it to operations. Ed will usually dispatch it to the crew. Crew goes out, changes the light, and then they bring an inventory sheet back to the warehouse, and the warehouse will keep track of this in the inventory. I'll get the service order back at the end, added to the monthly lighting work order, and it just continues from there. So I'm gonna overload you with a little bit of data. So here's some statistics for our system now. So overall in our system, as of today, we have 2,300 lights in the field. And as of today, about 64% of those have been changed to LED lights. We've been making excellent progress over this last year. And as well, we have all of Duffer and Tide Valley converted to LED as full dark sky compliance out there. And it just means fewer call outs to the Tide Valley Duffer area. I think this year we've only had, I want to say we only had like 4 call outs. And it used to be, send someone down there at least once a week to go change it. So back in 2019, we converted 257 lights. Then we started scaling things up slowly. 2020, we had 274 lights. Then this year, we had 406 lights converted to LED. And this is mostly due to, we're starting to narrow down to the crunchy center of the Dells. We started with the extremities of our system, Walnut, Tide Valley, Duffer. We recently did Cherry Heights, Rowena. We're starting to move into the downtown. So what we have coming up here, we're going to start converting the lights downtown to period lights. Now we have a new retrofit kit. Hopefully if the supply chain holds up, we'll be able to convert all of the downtown period lights to LED in 2022. That'll really benefit the downtown beautification project as well that's coming here. As far as downtown's concerned, we need about 215 of those guys, not including the 5 that we did a couple weeks ago. I'd also like to see a total system conversion here. If we keep pace with how we are right now, and then things will slow down as we start getting towards the end. It's going to be hard to find these high pressure sodium lights. We're looking at about 2024 for a complete date. Late 2024 on full LED. Another thing that's going to be holding us up here is ownerless lights. There are some lights out there, especially near our 2nd Street substation, that light up a mobile home park. These lights have been sitting up there for the longest time, and no one's been paying for them. So we're finding these account owners, we're contacting them, letting them know, hey, you have a light that you're not paying for. So we're smoothing that over, getting those lights added to their bill. Actually changed out. The ornamental lights, once we finalize the bulbs that we'd like to use on these, we'll start changing those out as well. We don't really have too many of them out there. I think it's about 50 total on our system. And then towards the end of this project, we're going to hand over the responsibility of lights to customer service. So they'll be creating the service orders and dispatching them to the crew, hopefully through the mobile service order system. We're still working some kinks out, keeping track. And I'll be training customer service as well on how to take these service orders, how to find the account owners. Hopefully, by that time, we'll have everything sorted out with ownership of these lights. So it'll be very easy and easy. And then like I said, they'll be trained in the whole process of forwarding the service order to operations, getting it dispatched, and closing it out.
Hey, give us an idea, if you can, for some of these lights that have not been being paid, the electrical part of it. What dollar amounts we talking? Not very significant.
Not incredibly. They're very few and far between when I do find them. For example, in this trailer park, they have 2 lights that they haven't been paying for, which amounts to about $20 a month bill. And that's the only example I can really think of off the top of my head right now. I'd really say I may be encountered, and most of the time I'm able to have someone with billing get a hold of them.
And you're not back billing them, you're just saying,
No,
forward, going forward, right?
It is our, I would say it's our, so we're not.
I bought my house in 1978 and didn't realize until 2002 that I had a separate line coming in for my irrigation, because the city forgot that there was a meter out there. So all of a sudden, I get notified in 2003, you now have 2 water bills, Mr. Foster. My first concern was they were gonna want the 25 years that I hadn't been paying for it. Well, the reason which they didn't.
So are you gonna look at people like for instance, on my farm, I've got 2 lights of the old style. They're behind the meter. Are you guys gonna start looking at those ones and say, hey, there's an option for you that's probably gonna be better on your bill?
So, I have gotten calls from people that want lights changed out, but they are after the meter. And unfortunately, due to, the point of demarcation on that line, we can't touch those lights. We can't do anything about them. We might have put them up, 30 years ago or something. A little boy comes over and puts your light up for you. But we can't touch those. I do suggest that they go look for LED solutions, but I don't give them any reference towards brands or anything. I just let them know that there is an option that can be available to.
It's a good consideration for our conservation group, though, as we're thinking about when we send out the LED light packages. Maybe that could be a future program in the more rural area that you might have multiple shop lights hanging outside somewhere on your side of the meter that we could probably help with. So Justin's dutifully taking a note, and Nathan will be contacted soon.
So I know most farms have them.
Yep.
But they're past the meter, so, but it would be something for us to suggest that you could save some money on your bill by getting a different light.
And it's some pretty easy conservation opportunity there too.
So you guys, you said that the LEDs are 10 times as expensive as the sodiums, essentially.
I don't know about 10 times as expensive. I'm not quite sure what those sodium bulbs are going.
Have you done the math to see what the savings in terms of the electrical use that you talked about, as well as the savings to the district in terms of personnel? Have you done the math to see how those two balance in terms of cost? Or, I mean, it's just curiosity. It's not that I think you should necessarily, but I just wondered if you had.
I don't have any numbers off the top of my head, and I'm not going to pretend that I do.
It's typically a 2-year.
For our agreement, when we go set up a new LED light, we do have a 2-year agreement with the customer to leave this light up. And that's about the amount of time it takes for us to recoup our costs of crew labor as well as the fixture.
And the energy conservation, if I could segue in one of the points that a few months ago I mentioned that we were approached by a group through the county that wants to talk about conservation efforts across the community for carbon reduction. This is a big one, LED light conversion. They're making a back assumption that would reduce carbon on the grid when we're just using less carbon-free energy in our system, but there's still some greater good involved here. So yes, we have been very supportive of LED conversion, not only for the safety of less crew rolling every time that they go up a pole or get in a bucket. That's a potential opportunity. So for us, it was if we don't have to touch something for 10 years as opposed to touching it every year, that there's just a benefit to that, as well as the true cost, reduced cost of energy. I think this is great. Truthfully, I wasn't aware that we were this far along. I think this is really cool.
Anything else?
Okay,
Well done, Nathan.
yeah, thank you very much, appreciate it. We love these show and tell things.
We'll be back.
Oh, look it up.
You can probably take those old bulbs.
Use one or two of those.
You didn't hear it from me, but, the little ceramic tubes in here are really good for sharpening.
Bulbs make great targets, just saying.
Right. Okay, obviously, Harvey's ready to go.
All right, so, for the month of November, we did have a, net income loss of 109,000. That was mostly impacted by about $144,000 write-off on assets on retirement. So when we retired our Chenoweth Harvey line, for the most part, an asset that hasn't fully depreciated. So what happens is depreciation costs, say if you have an asset, you're going to depreciate over 10 years. If you dispose of that asset 5 years in, you have a balance of that expense that needs to be recognized. And so that's what, in effect, on the Chenoweth Harvey line is reflecting a large chunk of that is unretired depreciation expense. So that's what that $144,000. There was some phones that were in there. There were a few $1,000s, but for the most part, that's the early retirement at Chenoweth Harvey line in order to facilitate the TransLink project that's going on. So that $143,000, had we not had that, we'd had a small increase in net income. It was a little bit lower overall anyway because we had some lower primary load, and we had a little bit warmer than normal November, but that's clearly being offset by a cold December and clearly a much colder January. So we'll be catching up on that. So thought I'd give you a heads up on that. One thing that you'll notice that is missing, that is not in the financial report, and that's our kilowatt hour report. We've got some data in there for generation and some other things that we're going to be looking for. I know I know Kurt's looking at it. I know Jeff looks at it. It affects me. It affects all of us when the meter data isn't always available. So as soon as we get that, we'll get that back online. There'll be another piece in the financial statements that'll be included. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Sure, absolutely.
That's the Bonneville meter data system that is behind. We haven't been effectively billed by BPA since, including November. It's an issue on their side, not on our side, and the entire region has an opinion on such things. And we'll hear about it again later this week, I'm sure, at PPC. And it was the question that I asked John Harrison during the Oatage presentation. What's the status of getting the meters working?
We're working on it.
We're working on it. It's their IT project.
It is.
Just give you an estimated.
We had an estimated for November, and maybe Kurt will go into it during his report, but in a system like ours, you can't just take last November and figure this November is the same, but that was their default.
Right.
Oh, that's just.
So
So we took the October bill and billed it for November.
Yeah.
I think in effect, because it's relatively close. There will be a true up. Yeah, no, thank you very much for jumping in on that. The other thing I thought I'd mention is for our annual audit process, our auditors come out, typically they come out in January. This year we had them come out in December. It's the first of two phases of the audit process. On the first part of it, that we call the interim field work, it's really looking at issues as our control processes, our policies, are we abiding by our policies, any major changes, major contracts, major legal issues, anything that this is kind of their initial assessment to find out what do they want to focus on in the audit. They'll tear into issues such as, I just like give you just kind of a brief scope on this. I mean, they'll look at our bank accounts, our debt balances, they'll look at legal risks, they want legal confirms, they're going to look at our policies, any significant accounting changes, any significant contracts with purchase power agreements, control matrix for payroll, for revenue cycle, for work order, sample testing on billing revenue, disbursements, inventory, payroll, IT, work orders, bank statements. They want to see rates. They want to see when were they enacted. They want to see testing on that to see that they were initially assessed. Through all of that, they found nothing. nothing of concern. Matter of fact, they did have a commendation, and I just kind of want to bring this up, that on the work order process, especially when with COVID going on, people going paperless, things being done much more electronically now, auditing firms are watching especially disbursements, payroll, and work order processes like they've never watched them before, because that's where things tend to fall apart. And we got special note on our processes for that, especially our work orders. Things are timely, things are verified, they're documented, they're reconciled, they're closed on a timely basis. And I'll give the team and the finance group, the E&O group, and everybody that makes that work just a special note by them, just saying that they wished other utilities were up on it like ours. So we've come a long way in the last 5 years on our work order process. We've done a lot of work, a lot of cooperation between the two teams in finance and the E&O group over the last 5 years. It's been exemplary. It's been noted by our auditors, and it continues to work that way. So it's great when your auditors take the first cut. And by the way, just as another note, this was a fresh team. These are two people that had never audited us before. So the old teams are gone. We got a new team now. So you had a whole fresh set of eyes, and they did not see anything either. So that's great news when you hear nothing back from your auditors and that there's really no findings. We'll get our shopping list here this month, and then we'll start for our final field audit the last week of February, first week of March. Our audit risk committee will be meeting either on March 28th or the 29th. It'll be a Monday, Tuesday. I'll confer with the team on when to meet. You'll get your initial findings from the audit. And then our plan is to have the auditors come and present the final financial audited statements at our April board meeting. So we're all on target for that. It's going really smoothly. That's a big deal. It consumes an enormous amount of work, but it also means it's an enormous amount of work to make sure you get that right. So it's going really well. Just thought I would mention too, Jeff mentioned it. Both Jeff 1 and Jeff 2 mentioned about our cyber risk coverage. That was quite a process. There was a lot to go through on it to make that happen. Just the special note I wanted to give on our broker is we found a coverage company, and they would ask questions, we would answer them, they would ask more questions, we would answer those. Things just kind of kept changing. And finally, our broker basically was able to get a meeting directly with the insurance company and just have a sit down. And so what had been dragging on for almost a month and a half of back and forth questions, in 30 minutes, we had all the questions answered. It was smooth, it was quick, it was efficient. Jeff had what he needed for his IT team to go after. And so we got that wrapped up, and we got that insurance bound and effective for January 1st. So we have $2 million in ransomware coverage that goes beyond the current $100,000 we have available. So that's already in place as we speak. And that kind of goes on in the background when you hear about a lot of cyber issues and things that Jeff talked about. So that's all in place.
Harvey, was that 30 million? What was that?
2 million.
2 million, oh, God.
2 million.
Really?
That would be a lot, 30 million.
I know, I was thinking, whoa.
Yeah, I didn't say the currency, whether it was Bitcoin or US dollars, so I could have been.
Yeah.
US dollars, $2 million. The other thing that's going on right now, we have our Otisha Haynes and Otisha Fanene are finalizing our purchasing administrative rules. That is really the formalized process for our purchasing process system. We have a purchasing policy that's in place. This is the administrative rules that are going to govern the program and how we do this going forward. It's a much more disciplined, intentional process. It's basically doing things that, and we're electing to go a little bit beyond what the law requires, because according to Oregon State procurement law, any purchases over $10,000 look for you to have 3 or more quotes. We're looking to try to get that down a little bit more and just make sure that we're doing proper price comparison on most of our purchases below 10,000. Obviously, we're not going to do that for pencils and paper, but when it comes to other things like a few $1,000s, we want to do that.
Did you have a question or? Oh, I thought you said. Oh, sorry about your cramp. You should see when you got to write this stuff, the cramps that you get. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Going back to your comment on risk management meeting, I'm just wondering if going forward, we ought to have different people in it that have been in the past.
I would encourage that. I mean, it's been great to, currently it's you, Jim, and Roger and Connie. It would be great to switch that up. And I think that really was the intention, but we left that up to the discretion of the board. But it's great when you have fresh sets of eyes that are hearing this information.
Experience where you see the other side.
Right.
That kind of narrows it down, but it would be, I think, a good idea.
I think it'd be an excellent idea.
Yeah, the president can do that, but
Yeah. Okay, and the other part too, and with that comes with that new purchasing administrative rules. With that and the implementation of it, we're going to be looked to at the March board meeting to have Otisha and Natisha come and do a presentation on that, just a brief one, to show you what we're doing at the district to more efficiently manage our procurement issues, and really also how we're managing supply chain risk too, as part of that process, because that's a continuous issue that we face.
So may I comment on that?
Absolutely.
I've reviewed that a couple of times, working with Otisha, and it is really helpful to have somebody who was in the military for as long as she was, because this is really a manual of how to do business, which is typical of what you get in the military, of a manual. And so I think she felt really comfortable putting it together, and really has done so far a really good job on it.
Good. Yeah. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. You know, and also with that, when it comes to the auditing process, Lana Egbert's been running point on that for the last couple of years. She's done an excellent job. She keeps everything on task. There are a lot of moving parts when you're trying to pull everything together, get it reviewed, get it uploaded appropriately. And Lana Egbert's done a fantastic job on that, keeping us on track. For risk management, just a couple things. We have our risk management committee. A couple things that are going to be a focus in the coming year when it comes to risk management is just focusing on our risk analytics, being a little more forward-looking rather than looking back on what we've done. We've looked at our mitigation plans, how we manage it currently. We're also wanting to now, I want to start pushing this towards, for our risk committee, to start looking at risk analytics. How can you better predict or see things in the future? And then, and key risk metrics to start looking at things that are a little more forward-looking. You know, you really do want risk metrics that are better than key performance indicators that go bad. You want something a little bit stronger than that. So that's something we're going to be looking at. And then also coming as a coming traction at our February board meeting, we're going to be looking at our reserve margin, our reserves review, and that'll be coming up next month. Any questions for the board on finance? Okay.
Let's talk about the risk management thing.
Sure. Yes.
So is it time to make the change? Is that what I'm hearing from everybody?
That's up to the board's discretion.
Yep.
Board, what do you think? I heard Connie.
no, I think it's done. Connie and I have done it a couple of years in a row, and the one I'd like to really see on it, if possible, is Greg, just because he's fresh, but he's got a lot on his plate, and I wouldn't push it in any way, shape, or form, but at some point, and it may not be this year, Greg, but you'd learn a lot. And I don't think Wayne's been on it either. And I think it's enjoyable.
I just got put on though at the last meeting we had. It was you, me, and Harvey.
Well, not for
sure. That's true. That's true. You did. You too. So I guess.
Wake up, Harvey.
And it's going to be Wayne and another person. Because he's brand new. I'm sorry.
That's what makes the most sense, Howard.
I'm a short-termer, guys, and really, I think it should be somebody that's going to be on the board for long.
Okay, it has nothing. It's just I don't think that has anything to do with it, Howard. You don't get to work this year. You better work.
I thought I was floating out of here.
You're not. You're working like the rest. My point is, you have just as much for the committee to bring back to the board. That's all.
Okay.
It's on the board.
Did I hear uncle? No,
I heard a lot of pressure.
all right.
So, Mr. President, do you still want me to serve on it then? Or do you want to find another lawyer?
Do we need to vote on that? You know, I think I could bring up a motion. Yeah, I think that'd be very appropriate for you.
And FYI, Mr. President, I was appointed to the board and worked on it while I was still president. So it's a dual purpose.
All right, thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Did you capture that the risk committee is now Director Jacobson, President Howe, and General Counsel Foster?
No.
That's what we should capture.
So say that again, so.
The risk management committee will be Director Jacobson, President Howe, General Counsel Foster, as well as staff.
President Gunter.
Oh,
What
Howard.
did I say?
How?
Oh,
I mean,
sorry.
I know it's a
I
Freudian,
liked it.
whatever, that was a Freudian slip.
You said it twice.
I'm going, what's wrong with my hearing aid?
Jacobson, Gunter,
Even I got confused on that.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thanks, James.
all right. Who's up next here?
This is what happens when you guys don't have the gavel.
Yeah.
Discipline.
Our research. Yeah, I think, is he trying to get on here? Kurt? Yeah.
Kurt,
There
you're
it is.
still muted.
Oh,
There you go.
good point. There we go. All right. I thought you'd never get to power resources for a while, but I'm gonna fly through this really quickly. Hydro plants, the performance in 2021 was excellent. You'll see the KPIs next month. But I just have a gut sense right now that you're gonna really love them. Winter outages. Trust me. Winter outages have started. The McNary annual outage started Monday, January 3rd at 0600, and it will continue until sometime in late January or February. It's really driven by a Bonneville power transmission work that's going on in McNary switchyard. So the Dalles Fishway, they start their outage on January 10th, which is next Monday. And that one could extend as late as into February 2022. So more to come on that. Hopefully we'll get an update and it'll only be a 3-week outage, which is typical. Projects at the McNary Fishway, I mentioned earlier about the Army Corps of Engineers easement that's underway for the ingress-egress project, and Northern Wasco staff will work with Clickitat staff to gain consensus regarding ingress and egress. More to come on that in future meetings. For the Dalles Fishway, we started selling the output of the hydro plant to Brookfield Renewables at 0 on January 1st, 2022. It was a market sale by Northern Wasco to Brookfield. Interestingly, Brookfield has been sending the energy into California, where there's an appetite for carbon-free energy. And we expect to see more of that for the next 2 years. The trash rack rake project, which is a project where Northern Wasco has taken over operation and maintenance responsibility to clear the trash racks at the North Fish Ladder. Northern Wasco began regular clearing of the trash racks in late 2021, and that is continuing through, well, indefinitely at this point. The juvenile fish sampling facility, construction started on that. Rough grading is completed. Concrete will be poured for foundations as soon as the weather is improved. And we have prefabricated components that are nearly completed and ready to be moved to the project and installed after we have concrete foundations in place. For wholesale power contracts, there was some discussion earlier about the BPA meter data. The loss of BPA meter data since October, November timeframe means that we don't have good visibility of certain portions of our retail load. For the BPA power and transmission bills for October, November, and probably December, we're going to get estimated bills. Well, we've had October and November estimated at this point. December will likely also be estimated. We've used the October bill, which we got most of the data out of the BPA system to do in October billing reconciliation. But we've applied that for the November bill. December, we're hoping BPA gets the meter data fixed. They really only have about 7 days now because by the 10th, we have to settle up on the numbers. True-ups are going to be applied when good meter data has been restored. We're all trying to give BPA support to get that system fixed because we all rely on it. Jeff's SCADA project will begin to address some of the deficiencies that we see from having a single source of meter data. For a large segment of our load, we have SCADA on and our own Northern Wasco meters, and so the accurate metering and billing has not been interrupted for a large segment of our load. We've had big changes in the lineup of non-federal suppliers that started on January 1st this year. Shell Energy North America is now our predominant wholesale power supplier. And Northern Wasco is currently managing 64 megawatts of non-federal energy transactions around the clock. And that will continue into 2022 and increase during future months. Portland General, the scheduling agent agreement, which we entered into with Portland General back in September, has been very successful during the first 3 months since we've been working with Portland General on that. There have been a handful of curtailments, all at the Calpine Hermiston plant, which were promptly resolved by Portland General. So just wanted to report that that arrangement has been very successful and certainly allows me to take it a little easier during, typically those curtailments have happened on Sunday mornings at like 2 a.m. So instead of it being a urgent call for me to help resolve something, Portland General staff are resolving those issues now. So that's the entire Power Resources report for this month. Any questions?
I'm guessing the snowpack is good, Kurt?
Yeah, snowpack I just saw today was 105, well, water supply is 105% of normal is what they're predicting. We're seeing really crazy snowpack levels around the region. So all this precip is really good. There's some concern right now about this Pineapple Express that's supposed to hit us later in the week. Could cause some flooding and early runoff of snow, which would normally remain up in the snowpack. So we'll see how that plays out Thursday and Friday.
I know we don't have any real-time price exposure, but are you seeing any chaos in the real-time market?
Only late last week. What we're seeing is that the additional precipitation and water forecasts have pushed all of the forward term product prices downward out through until about Q3. So we're seeing prices for February, March, April, May into June have really dropped in the last few days with all of this precipitation. Load levels don't seem to be driving, spot market prices up that much. I mean, we saw mid-sea daily prices at 130 late last week when the really cold weather was hitting, but that's moderated quite a bit now.
Thank you.
Do you know what the snow level is, the latest information by chance?
I don't.
Anybody know?
The what?
The snowpack.
Said the water content was about 104%.
That's the, that's the ESP of median, 105% of median is the Dallas Dam. So that's just predicting for the water year, we'll be a little bit over median. Snowpack is, I won't jump in. I know I look at it too. You guys jump in because you guys are the experts. There's a lot, it's pretty heavy snowpack, especially up in Canada. Canada's really heavy. The upper Snake Basin that looked really weak here a couple months ago is looking decent now. Northwest Montana that supplies it's looking good. Cascades are looking good. So, I mean, that's what I saw. Kurt, jump in, but that's what I saw.
No, that's true. The map is turned all green now, so all green is good for snowpack levels or snow water equivalents.
Well, I'd heard a couple figures, but I wasn't sure if they were accurate or not, but it's improved dramatically in the last 3 weeks or so, maybe a little longer.
Oh,
than that. Yeah. Okay.
Yes, much
Our
better.
resource-
It's almost midnight where Cindy is. Maybe we can get corporate services going.
Yeah, it's actually only almost 11, but it's all worth it.
Okay.
Ready for
Go ahead.
corporate? Okay. The job description project update, after a great deal of work on Kara's part on format to make sure that we are pay equity law compliant. She's in the first round of job description updates. A big thank you to Jeff, who has jumped in it with us. We currently have 15 in progress. I think all but 3 of those are his in either engineering or IT. Kara is also working to have a board job description and comp training to present to you next month at the board meeting, just kind of an overview of the uses of and importance of job descriptions and how we set our compensation here at the PUD. From a government affairs perspective, we had a PPC call this morning. For the moment, Build Back Better is effectively dead in the water. Could be brought back in another iteration. But one of the things pointed out in the call this morning is that this particular year, legislature is likely to be much less productive than in the past few years. One interesting piece of information, the U.S. Senate Committee on Energy and Natural Resources will be holding a hearing next week on maintaining existing hydropower capacity and expanding hydropower. And our very own Scott Corwin from Northwest Public Power Association will be testifying regarding non-federal hydro resources. I'm really looking forward to hearing what he has to say on that topic. Lily's public relations work. The last couple of, well, since the December outage, she and I have been discussing trying to brainstorm different ways for Lily to get information and photos during the outages. Jeff mentioned that as part of their debrief. A couple of things that we've discussed, and Jeff will be has agreed to work with us on these options. Possibly having someone from engineering take Lily out to get what we'll call communication photos versus operational photos for those communications. We're also going to look into getting her some training on how to use the AMI system for customer counts and locations on these outages so that she can get that data. One of the issues, obviously, operations is busy doing the work, busy getting customers up and running during these outages. They don't have time to take the pictures she needs or send her information as often and as in-depth as the customers want it. So we're simply looking for other ways to help Lily get that information. From HR perspective, we are working on trying to dig some workforce-related data out of UPN. If necessary, maybe look at documents. Things such as historical FTE, salary expenses, benefit expenses by year, retention and turnover data that we would like to start to share with the board. Those are the things that we've been focusing on in corporate services this last month.
Questions, comments?
I think the expanded communication out during outages really helps the call volume coming in. So the clear picture that we can provide, even using pictures or maps, will only benefit the community as we're going through these. And that's the perfect segue to the next topic. Thank you, Cindy.
Thank you. Yeah, and I think Jeff thinks that we're about 3 to 4 months away from being able to put an outage map on the website.
Wow.
Now, you said it in a public meeting, so no pressure.
I'm not sure if you're in bed or you're sitting up or.
She's at her desk.
Oh, you're at your desk?
I'm in Georgia.
That's what I thought. You're gone visiting a new baby or something, right?
Yes, indeed. We had to postpone our trip back. We'll be coming back next week. The kids, unfortunately, my son-in-law's father passed away on a week ago this morning. So they actually left for Maryland this past weekend. So we're just kind of hanging out in Georgia until we can actually get back home.
Well, take care. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Okay,
Customer service.
take it away.
Happy New Year, everyone. You're not supposed to laugh about that. It's just me. Episode. All right. So as usual, our customer service by numbers here. We actually saw, obviously, with some inclement weather across the nation, really. So our answering service we had an increase in answering service calls that they managed, as well as the main office. But what we did see is that the call duration from the answering service was reduced, and mainly that was due to customers be driven by, when's my power going to get turned on? What do I owe on my bill? And then they're directed another means to pay their bills. So, which is good, because the call wait time from the call center service was, and we heard a lot of feedback from our customers, it was a little long. When you start getting 5 to 6 minutes, customers don't want to wait that long. They'll hang up and they'll try again. And then by the time that call actually gets received here in the main office, you already have an irritable customer. So things have turned around a little bit on that. We did see a decrease in disconnects, connects. Again, during the winter months, you wouldn't anticipate seeing near the same volume of those. Our payment analysis graph, we did see a difference in how we receive payments here, which is a little interesting, the cash register. So we actually had a pretty good volume of customers showing up to the office and wanting to pay their bills. Some of that driven by wanting to pick up a calendar or a little pocketbook, or really just to get out and reconnect with the folks out in the general public. I don't know how many different customers, it's part of their trip. They come by the utility and they just want to talk, and they're, happy that we're open, and they're tickled pink to get the new calendar in their pocketbook. So that's what we saw there, was certainly an increase in foot traffic into the main building here. Go ahead and back to the main. Our aged balances for our residential customers did increase a little bit, and that's to be anticipated because we are not performing disconnects, obviously, during inclement weather. But for the most part, our customers are managing, their bills pretty well. In comparison to this time last year, we were still down almost 30%, 29% better. So I think that's all good signs, really. And then in our commercial space, again, it has gone up. When you see a large percentage like that, you're thinking, oh my word, that's huge. But again, that could be driven by one customer, and it's just how they pay their bill and how that mechanism comes through. So it's nothing alarming, certainly. It's just their process and how they pay their bill and how we receive it. So, and then our programs, it was pretty minimal for our neighbor-to-neighbor program. A lot of the money is still coming through LIHEAP funds. There's a lot of funds available out there. They did see a bit of a hiccup in the payment center system at the state level, so that has kind of held back some of the payments that truly need to get applied to those customers, as well as them not being able to take in customers. So we're kind of seeing a cause and effect here because they are not able to process. And when I say they, the CAP office, when they're not able to process customers, the customer isn't able to pay their bill, which then allows their past due amount to increase. So with that, so that's kind of one of those downstream effects. The CAP office did say that the state has alleviated the issue, and so those payments will start to roll in again, and they'll be able to start processing customers with regards to them needing energy assistance.
That's through the federal funds?
Yes.
So I went into their office on another matter, and I talked to the lady that administers the neighbor-to-neighbor program.
Mm-hmm.
I said, I'd like to talk to her because I was going to make my wife and I were going to make a contribution. And I said, where are you guys financially this year? Because if you're in good shape, I'll make that contribution to some other appropriate agency or program. And she said, because of the federal funds, we are in good shape. But my concern about that is that we take a long-term approach as to that program, because it has really been a beneficial program, I think, for our customers, our low-income customers over the years. And I'd hate to see us make dramatic changes in how we're going to deal with that, only because they had this infusion of state money from the feds that isn't going to be there 3 years from now or 2 years.
Yeah. Yeah, our neighbor-to-neighbor program, both with contributions, monthly contributions, and then also the Roundup program. To me, granted, I've only been monitoring it for the last year and a half, but it is at a really good level to help customers and to be able to sustain that out into the years. So, which is nice because I would like for the utility to be able to operate that neighbor-to-neighbor program also internally, just for the fact that if the CAP office is busy helping all other customers, we're still able to help those customers receive those funds. So, and it is a PUD program, so we should be able to facilitate that ourselves. And then our customer deposit returns, just the customers that were eligible based off of their good credit history for the last year is what we returned in that amount. And then, want to go ahead and scroll down for me, Sarah? Our surveying, I haven't seen any new results. The last one though, did bump up our response to outages, which, again, the utilities out there, rain or shine, trying to get folks' power on and communicating with customers along the way. So that was a positive feedback there. And then I added our EV charging graph here, and this is both the city-owned, the Lewis and Clark EV charger down there that the city owns and operates, as well as the PUD main parking lot EV charger out here. And so really it's just a graph there in kilowatt hours. The Lewis and Clark goes back to July 2019, and then the one here at the PUD just goes back to February 2020. So you can see here at the utility, it's pretty minor in use. But the one at the Lewis and Clark, if you were to trend that up, it is kind of increasing on that. And it's still free to the public. The city is still offering that. I don't know for how long they'll continue to offer free charging to the public. I know there's many local residents that take advantage of that. So that's a good thing. The one thing that we will be doing the start of next week, though, is our single port charger out here will actually get changed out. We'll offer a dual port charger. And part of that is we have staff that has purchased electric vehicles or the hybrid version. So now we'll be able to offer both the public and staff additional charging, and we'll take that one and we'll move it back to the south wall outside of the operations room there. And so then folks back there can charge as well. So I think that's a benefit, certainly, you know, for our staff, you know, that are wanting to use electric vehicles for them to charge as well. And then on the flip side, then we can claim the clean fuels credits, which then feeds back into the EV program. So it's kind of a win-win there. And that's what I have for customer service. Update-wise in customer service, on the automation of our system for the demand rates for our billing is active and up. Billing statements are all correct. And what this was for our billing system to track customers in the demand rate schedule, whether they had eclipsed 50 kW in a given month or below. So instead of looking at the previous 11 months, that pretty much kind of sets them into the one rate schedule or the other. Now the system will track from them on a month-to-month basis. So that's active and live. We are going to be sending out some communications to customers just so they know, you know, that there may be differences from one bill to the next, because there will be some cost shifts depending on how their business operates with that. And then coming into 2022, you know, we're always looking to make improvements. So there's some aspects within the customer service policy that I'll be bringing to the board that we'll look at revamping and changing. And then at maybe some other customer programs, maybe potentially prepaid metering that I would like to offer customers. So programs like that we'll be looking at in short order for 2022. Okay, energy management.
Like a smart sheet commercial, Justin.
I know. Plug. So first thing right off, go ahead and click on the IQ Service Portal. This is now live, and what this is us partnering with Efficiency Services Group. We are now able to process customers who want to take advantage of our income qualifying weatherization program. Instead of those customers going through the CAP office and potentially being put on a 2-month wait basis to see if they qualify and then get fed back into our system, we're now able to offer through a third party the income qualifying services to customers who want to take advantage of our program. If they want to take advantage of the CAP program, they'll still have to go and apply to the CAP office to receive those funds. And really what this does is, again, it streamlines the process. There's been a lot of customer feedback that they're frustrated. They haven't been able to, you know, take advantage of the work that they want to have done at their residences. So ESG, if you want to scroll down for me real quick, there's a link, both English and Spanish, on that income verification portal. It's the second right there in the IQEE. Either one. That one's the Spanish, that one's the English. Yep. So again, no paperwork, no data coming into the utility. This is all handled third party, and it's on a secure web exchange with documents and all the information. All we get is pretty much a green light or a red light if the customer qualifies or not. And then from there, then we will reach out to the customer and let them know actually if they've qualified, what the next step will be, and what we need to do to help them along. So what does the customer do?
What do you do about it? Because you're determining whether.
No, we don't determine. That's the third party. So really the third party, based off of the general guidelines, with no different than the CAP office, we just get verification from them whether the customer has qualified or not.
How does that speed it up?
Sorry?
How does that speed it up?
So it speeds it up because based off of the volume that the CAP office deals with, they have multiple counties that they actually facilitate that process for. So it's not just our customers, it's Wasco Electric's customers, it's Hood River Electric, it's Pacific Power. So they have a much bigger volume of customer intake that they have to process. So our customers are getting lost in that process. And so by having another channel for our customers to be able to utilize will help streamline if they directly want to just try to take advantage of our program versus maybe the CAP program in addition to ours. So
Who pays that? Yeah, that's my question.
so the application process, it's a minimal fee that the utility pays for. We're paying for it through the CAP office. It's at a much higher rate. It's the service that the CAP office renders for us in qualifying customers.
The CAP office verifies the income of the people. That was my question.
Yep.
How does the company verify the income?
The same process with regards to the documentation that the customer provides for income, how many are in the household, the heating and all that. So it's very similar in the construct, but again, that's what the third party does is they offer that service to customers. So
What's the estimated cost annually?
well, it's going to be driven off of customer volume.
5,000, 50,000?
No, heavens no. I mean, at $25 an application, $100 a month.
We're talking a few grand.
Yeah.
Method is less than what we're paying now.
Exactly. It's 3 times, less than what we're paying. So this is a cost savings, and for the ESG to stand this up for us was less than $2,000. So it was a win-win. And what we can do with this same platform is I can apply it to any other potential programs like our neighbor to neighbor, because again, our neighbor to neighbor is facilitated off the same kind of income guidelines. So now we could look at operating or another channel to help customers get streamlined to be able to get that assistance that they need. So this is just another tool at our disposal to help customers or in us helping customers. So.
Justin, can I interject?
Yeah.
So to answer Jim's question, I went through the other side of it. So previous year's tax document, pay stubs within a year of today's date, pension or disability statements, all your verifiable information.
That was what I was looking for, yeah.
And it doesn't go to us, it goes to the third party.
Yeah, so Jim Foster can't just go say, I'm making $5,000 a year and I qualify.
Right.
Yeah, no, you have to upload the document. Oh, sorry.
And again, this is a third of the cost and twice this fast. I'll simplify it.
That sounds great.
Streamlined.
Does.
Can you go back to the energy management dashboard? Okay, and then so really what this is kind of energy management by numbers. And again, so with energy management, we're looking actually at November numbers, just in how things are processed in that world with BPA and how rebates are paid to and customers are processed. So clothes washers, refrigerators, weatherization projects. Looks like I did a whoopsie-daisy and I forgot to label the individual columns there in the weatherization project. So how that sectionalized is windows, like attics, exterior doors within those projects and makes up that total project number and those individual cost numbers there. And then our heat pumps, high efficiency heat pumps, smart thermostats, income qualified projects, and commercial projects. A lot of the commercial projects are really starting to take or gain steam. And this goes back to commercial lighting. Businesses transitioning over to LED lights. There's incentives out there for commercial businesses to be able to change over their lighting. So the work that we're doing to change out, our street lighting is resonating with the businesses, and these are large retailers that are wanting to do lighting change within their stores and how they operate. So again, conserving energy is a big motivator, obviously, because that helps control costs. So, which at the end of the day helps me as a consumer keep my what I spend there that much lower. And then the kilowatt hour savings 2021 versus 2022. So this is year prior. It's not really indicative of the work that was done. This is just, I thought I'd start comparing things, just kind of as not a benchmark, but just to show in relation some of the work of recently that we're really doing as compared to this time last year. I mean, COVID was still pretty, lockdown type scenario with what we were able to do out in that space. So you can see things are already starting to pick up in the kilowatt hour savings. And that's what each one of the projects and rebates and measures that both Travis and Caesar are going out and getting for residential and commercial customers. This is what we see for kilowatt hour savings on the other side. So for updates with energy management, I mentioned the commercial lighting. It's really starting to pick up, and Travis is really excited with that as he's taken on the commercial space and starting to learn more within that. He's excited to work with all these businesses that he's never had contact with. So that's another additional part to that feeds my key accounts and getting communications out to these customers and really kind of being an additional kind of conduit from that business to the utility, whether it be rate-based or cost savings that they may be able to take advantage of. And then one other update, the Celilo Village work. The Celilo Village will start to receive replacement heat pumps starting next week, which is great for some of those folks because some of them don't have heat source right now. And if they do, it's wood heat or it's electric inefficient, just driving of a heat furnace.
What size units are they going to be?
I don't know. I'm sorry. I can certainly bring that back. I don't know the size of the heat pumps. They're not real big homes. I think they're probably approximately 900 to 1,100 square feet. So we're not talking, real big units. But the windows are still pretty delayed, and that's just because of shortages. It probably anticipates somewhere close to March for like actual windows to be replaced. It's just one of those things. There's a shortage. I mean, you're hearing it across all other equipment, far and abroad. So that's one of those things. And then things to come up for energy management, we're just really getting out there and engaged with the customers, continuing doing what their guys are doing, really driving the commercial space. A good idea is to look at our residential customers with lighting potential incentives that we can offer to them on their own behind the meter outdoor lighting. So that's what I got. Any questions?
One question on the security deposit refunds. Is that something people have to request, or is that done automatically? Or
so it used to be a manual process. That was one of those processes we were able to automate within our customer information system. So now, if they meet the parameters with regards to if they have, in essence, less than 2 points, as we call them, within our customer service policy. So if it's like late notices, cutoffs, or any delinquents, those are points that kind of go against the customer. If they have a clean record within 12 months of them signing on service and providing that customer or that deposit, then it'll get returned to them directly as a credit onto their account.
Okay, any other questions?
Just a comment. Last week, I saw a Facebook post where some people were kind of badmouth PUD.
Yeah.
And I wanted to take a screenshot and send it to you. But I didn't, and then I lost it. But I figured you.
I help with that one directly. Yep, certainly.
Okay. So you can have it and see what's going on.
So backstory is those services had been mixed up for some time, and it's just one of those things. So it doesn't get caught until a customer potentially says, "Hey, why does my power keep going out?" Well, the other customer, based off of their payment history, kind of is a little bit back and forth. And so when we actually had somebody go out and look at it, it was confirmed that the in essence, the services should have gotten, reversed. And so one customer was paying the other customer's usage and vice versa. The one that was complaining was actually getting the good deal. Irony behind it.
Yeah.
So we're going to make right by the customers. Certainly the one customer who had been paying more, we're going to credit that customer. We're not going to back bill the other customer just because it's just good. It's the right thing, right? But we did communicate going forward, just so you know, your usage will go up because you think you've been paying or paying this when it's been 3 times as much that the other customer has actually been. So I communicated that.
Can we sign up for that program?
Yeah. So,
It literally was a house versus a studio.
yeah.
And one was getting a much better deal, and because his or her neighbor wasn't necessarily paying on time, it came to light. And now we're gonna clean it going forward, but.
Steven going forward.
Squeaky wheel.
He certainly wasn't as thankful as I thought he would be, but that's fine. But at least we, conveyed back apologies for the inconveniences of the intermittent, power disconnects, but that was not our intent.
I just found it interesting because people were writing on there, I hope you ask them for your money back for the time that you didn't have power that they were billing you. It's like, you don't get billed if you don't have power.
There you go.
There's a lot of ignorance going around too.
Do you remember what Jeff Griffin said about public employees? The default setting is that we're wrong, whether we are or not.
Yeah.
And we know that, and we're not gonna get in the weeds on a social media post with them.
Right, and that's why I didn't answer it. I didn't get in the middle of it either, but I thought I should take a screenshot and send this to Jeff, but it was, or to Justin, but it was like on a weekend or something, and it's like I didn't want to.
Our folks caught it, and
Good,
Yeah.
good. I was hoping they did.
And there is, words to what Jeff said earlier that the general public is not more sensitive, but they are certainly more on edge with things that have happened, and they have more vocal voices now, which, for folks internally, especially the customer service agents, I always have to reiterate to them, it's not you, it's a situation, but it takes a lot. So and we're preparing for this, we're going to start with customer communications leading up to the rate increase in May. But I imagine there's going to be a bow wave of, that there is no right that the PUD can do. But again, at the end of the day, we're going to show professionalism and be courteous right back at them. So it's just.
Well said.
Well, there's a lot of anonymity on the internet, and the PUD is a big nebulous organization that we can badmouth all we want because there's not a name per se that's attached to it sometimes. So that, and not just PUD, it happens with a lot of entities like that. So they can do no wrong, do no right in the eyes of some people, and some people are just going to complain anyway.
Right.
So.
We also know our overall satisfaction is very high.
Oh yeah, and it resonates. Whether it's to the guys in the back, to the linemen, or to just to who they dealt with on the phone for customer service. I have to say, there's more of that than there ever has been. So there is a good portion of the general public that is appreciative of.
You gotta remember, we're a microcosm of what's happening in this country. There's a lot of divisiveness and a lot of division, and it's overflowing into other kinds of situations.
But on the other side of the coin, when we had that big power outage, there was a lot of posts saying thank you to the linemen. I mean, even if you were out 8 or 10 hours, we were appreciative that we got the power back on. That I drove to town a couple times that day and saw them working on the line out of my place, and we were just appreciative that they were out there working in that weather and getting us back going again.
Yeah.
So, and I saw a lot of posts, more posts to that effect.
Well, and as Roger communicated, there was a couple things that we've identified to do better in communicating out to customers. Sarah had a good idea of what we could spin up a front end message in our answering or in our call service phone tree that it tells the customer right away, you know, we're experiencing a widespread outage. You know, there is no we don't have an anticipated time of when power will be restored. So what that does is it helps curb, I mean, we were like this constantly trying to manage all the calls just to tell the customer the same message. But things like that, it's push notifications that we can send out to customers. It's the posts, you know, so.
But that worked in your favor because I called in at like 4 o'clock in the morning to report my outage. And he already had on there, we have a widespread outage in Ty Valley and Water.
Yeah.
We know, we're working on it, we'll get you power up as soon as we can.
And that was,
You'll be in, you know,
that was probably
we'll
relayed
put you in the line to get it on there.
yeah, that was probably relayed from operations up to the call center service, and they're great. I can't say enough positive things about CRC, even though.
That was nice as a customer to know that, hey, it's not just me, it's all over the place. And then I could set my expectations of it's gonna be a while because we got all kinds of lines down everywhere.
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you very much, Justin, good job.
I have a couple, and it's a good segue because it's all the things that we've been talking about tonight. The CAP office, and sorry, I can either see or breathe, so I'll stay over. Thank you. CAP office and some other agencies are working together to build, I believe what they're going to call the navigation center. And it'll be a one-stop shop for people in need of services, whether it's people experiencing houselessness, I think is the correct way to say it now, and or other needs of other services. They've reached out to us to gauge our partnership and interest in energy conservation, solar plus storage for resiliency. And I just wanted to check in because my communication back to them has been, we do have conservation programs available to the public. We haven't spent a lot of time on new builds, like if you're going to build a new building or a new facility in our service territory, of some of those upfront conservation measures, but we're going to explore and talk about, see what's available out there. And what I've provided the feedback on, and just want to check in with you guys, as my boss is on this, is it's like, yes, we hear you about solar plus battery storage for resiliency, but just as a reminder, we do have 99.96% reliability and uptime, even in outage season, and that all of our resource stack is currently carbon free. So I don't know if you're making a financial decision when you talk about these specialty projects, but I'm not saying don't do them, it's nuts. I'm saying you should do it for you should consider economics in your responses. So I just want to make sure I'm not going against the path of the board on those things. So you guys are okay with those type of responses? Okay.
That makes sense.
Yes, and one, I know when we're presented and approached with these things, that sometimes there's a request for dollars. So I'm trying to be mindful of that as well, that we have economic development programs, we have energy conservation programs that we only not only use Bonneville funds, but we use utility funds, customer owner funds, and to be prudent with those. So just being
with the conservation programs, is there anything still going? When I built back in '85, I started building, the Super Good Sense program was there, and I was actually the first house in our district to be built under the Super Good Sense guidelines. Is there still something like that for contractors, showing them, you know, things you should do with the 6-inch walls and the notches on the bottom, running wires instead of the middle of the studs, or anything like that going on?
I presume that there's still other guidelines and programs out there. I'm just not readily familiar with them off the top of my head. I'm sure we can provide a report back to the board.
Okay. And I think I still have my manual, I think, about the Super Good Sense program.
So similarly, and I shared with a few of you at dinner, we were contacted kind of with a sense of emergency yesterday with regard to a Red Cross warming shelter that was put up at the Discovery Center. And just so you guys know that we did respond to support. The concern was that they were doing generator fuel fills every few hours to keep it running, and there was asking about a potential service drop, temp drop. The Discovery Center is an underground feed, and there wasn't necessarily a line to tap off of, but they did secure the generator to a light pole, to keep it safe, next to the facility. And it turns out that that light pole has a junction box and access panel on the bottom of it. And, our feedback that we provided to them is they could have an electrician put an outlet there at that junction box likely, and that would feed their needs based on the loads that were, and you were actually out there, right? So,
Yeah, I looked, the crew went and looked, and that was probably the easiest of the thing, and I spoke to Matthew at Wasco County this morning. Sounded like it was a public health deal, and so they'd have to get permission from the Discovery Center, so he's gonna chase down that avenue the last I spoke.
got it. But we were responsive when they reached out to us. We're not always able to help, but we'll always try.
So that remain there when they leave?
The outlet would just be temporary, is my assumption, and I think it's literally a tent with a Honda generator.
Yeah.
Chained to a light pole.
Yeah, it's chained to the pole.
Up there. Yeah.
It's on the far end of the parking lot. I was like, where is this? And I happened to look over, and it's just this tent, completely like from the main entrance to the Discovery Center. It's probably a football field away. That's kind of an odd spot, but hey, works.
And again, they called us. We're gonna respond. We're gonna try. It just wasn't. So we asked if you're gonna do pre-planning for any other emergency shelters, call us first so we can figure out if there's power nearby.
Yeah.
We've talked about it in here, the parcel of interest across the street that could be part of a larger development for a recreation center, sports complex, et cetera. That parcel was appraised. We received the appraisal back from the county, and if they want to continue to go forward, the language that we have been using is fair market value. Fair market value of the appraisal was, I believe, much more than what we paid for it. So there's an opportunity. The needs of the district haven't changed. They still need a place to store equipment, potentially forward staging for infrastructure projects, poles, transformers, what have you. Our need doesn't necessarily mean it needs to be across the street, but we're still open to conversation with the county on the best way to move forward for that. But just so the board knows, we did get the appraisal back. And quick one, while we're on that kind of conservation, Mayor Mays did reach out to me right before the holidays and ask our interest in participating in a kind of a climate change task force, if that's the format that it's going to take. I said I was fine participating on behalf of the PUD, myself and or staff, just because what could come from this would be potential, legislation that you've seen in other municipalities of green power only, no natural gas. It's taken the extremes. So I'd rather be at the table than on the table, as it were. We do a lot of excellent work. The LED presentation that we heard tonight, the infrastructure investment presentation that we heard, just the different conservation work that we do in the community, as well as keeping our rates lower, very competitive as compared to everyone around us. I think I want to protect that on behalf of the customer owner. So with your permission, I'd like to participate in this if it comes to fruition. Okay, thank you.
And just make sure we're part of the process.
Yeah.
Because, as I said, I know those folks. They're all good folks, but they have pretty much taken extreme situations. Maybe that's changed, I don't know.
Well, as I joke with our Power Resources Department, I look outside and I wouldn't want to be solely dependent on wind or solar.
There's a big article about that. In fact, Europe is having a big problem with that right now. Some of the Western Europe countries have done that, and they can't get power, and they figure their power bills are going to go up 60 to 70% this winter.
Well, look what happened in Texas last year.
Yeah.
Lastly, I want to thank General Counsel Mr. Foster, continues to support us. I missed that House Bill 2560, updating the public meeting law during last session, went into effect this month, about kind of always having the telephonic or digital option for public meetings. I interpret it as it's kind of here forevermore. So just wanted to thank him and appreciate his oversight in ensuring that we're not only compliant, but that we're always going to do right. So I think we've gotten good at it. You know, we've had people from both coasts participate in our meetings, and we're able to have information shares, and we're going to continue to get better at it. So thank you for your support of that.
Okay, any questions? Board, any questions, comments?
Howard, I'm
Mr.
not on
Foster.
the agenda tonight,
I
but
was just coming to you.
if general counsel can have us out of the agenda.
I was just coming to you, Jeff.
Well, I wanted to comment on one of the things that Roger referred to, and that was the navigation center. I don't know how aware you are of that. And it's not what they came to you for, but I found out about what they were doing, and I'm absolutely satisfied that if we don't do something about the situation we have on the streets right now, that in 5 years, we're going to have a substantial portion of our population living in a third world country, because that's essentially what it is out there. And so trying to find solutions to that, I think, has been a huge problem. So I heard about the navigation program, this navigation center. So I went down to CAP the same day I spoke to the other woman, and had a chat with Kenny LaPointe, who is the director of CAP now. And as a result of that conversation, I had a client donate almost 3 acres of commercial property worth in excess of $500,000 to that program to put this facility on. They were going to use the Hamilton Motel out here on West 2nd, which is a horrible location for anything like that. And in part of the due diligence in doing that, I found out more about this. And it's really not for people that want to live on the street or people, it's for people and families that don't want to be on the street. And it's going to provide temporary housing, medical care, which will include psychological care, employment training, so they can get them moved into medical facilities, food services, showers, that kind of thing, with the idea that it's a navigation center temporarily until they can move them into low-income housing, of which CAP has also got the property where Westgate Market used to be, which is going to be made available for that. So I think it's a tremendous program. I really do. I see it as a flickering but light in this whole issue. And I hope you as individuals can support it. I hope the PUD can do whatever it can do. It's not one, these guys, Kenny went to the legislature and got $1.5 million from the legislature for it. Wasco County has agreed to put in another $500,000. The city of the Dalles is going to put in somewhere between $500,000 and $750,000. Now, this is all that federal money that got filtered down that they're going to use, but they're stepping off the ledge with between $2.5 and $2.75 million plus a piece of land to do this. So it is probably going to happen, and I think it's really positive. And I think to the extent that we can help educate them as to the efficiency and benefit of the energy that we can provide, which is clean and inexpensive, versus some of the alternatives that they may hear about. I think that's really important for us to do. I'm not sure they qualify as economic development potential at this point with the kinds of funds they've already been able to raise, but they may in the future, who knows? But I just wanted to add that comment to that issue. Back on the other issue that we talked about during executive session, just generally, one of the things that we haven't done that we're going to do is to go back and look at the original agreements that were executed in the 90s with our partner. My guess is, and I haven't seen them for years, but I've got them, and if I can't find them, I know that Kurt will have them. My guess is when those were negotiated 25 years ago, there were dispute resolution provisions in them, which probably involve mediation as opposed to litigation. And it seems to me that that's one of the alternatives we should be looking at and saying, you know, we've got a real dispute here, and we think it's an issue of safety, and therefore let's talk about mediating this. If we can't do it any other way, it seems to me, and I just was thinking about that during the meeting, that's one option we may have. So, so that's just the two comments I want to make.
Good comment. Okay, okay, you have a report?
I do. You want to do new business?
Oh, yeah, I better do new business first. Any new business? Hearing none, proceed, please.
Okay, this is, my last OUTA report, personally. No, make it a good one. It'll be wonderful. So, under the Legislative Oversight Committee, as you know, Betsy Johnson has resigned her seat in the state Senate and will be preparing to run for governor. She already has several million in her coffer, and we'll see how that goes. Under other anticipated legislative issues, the LC on home cooling grants, the consensus is that this bill will not be controversial and only has upside for PUD customers. Under OSHA rules, no new information regarding vaccine mandates for large employers, but is expected to be released in 2022. New heat and smoke rulings also coming in 2022, which will be sent out to the group once they're made available. Under the Clean Fuels Program, the DEQ has set reductions by 20% by 2030, by 5% by 2035. Currently, the state has set the Clean Fuels Program target of 10% below carbon intensity levels of 2020, and this would extend that program past that date. They're looking into expanding hydrogen into this market as a fuel that could potentially generate credits. That's a little bit more. Under the BPA report, John Harrison spoke, and he reported that BPA's primary goal is to move forward with their strategic goal. Just recently, the DOE released their COVID-19 workforce safety framework, which permits a return to facilities in a more phased approach beginning as early as the middle of the month, January 18th. BPA will follow state and federal guidelines and follow their lead. And close to 87% of BPA's workforce has been vaccinated. BPA ended the fiscal year with an agency net reviews of $398 million, and they've made great efforts and progress in their efforts to join the EIM in March of 2022. And they will begin parallel operations at the beginning of December, which will give them a chance to test their systems in a simulated environment before they really get going. That's all I have, Mr. President.
Thank you, Roger. Okay, any other reports, board members? Anything?
I have a question. We're getting the credit from BPA, is that how I read that?
The reserves distribution.
Yes.
Yes.
Is it just gonna be a credit against what?
Per month, total value, 170,000-ish.
It wasn't huge.
Oh, that's great. That's better than the other way, how it usually goes.
Yeah.
Okay. I think we're down to the approval of future meetings, and that's all taken care of?
Yep.
Right? Okay, anything else come before the board?
The PPC forum and executive committee will be here on Zoom.
Correct.
Okay,
On both of them or just the first?
well, both days.
Tomorrow and Thursday.
Tomorrow,
3 and 8.
3 and 8
Okay.
the next day,
Okay.
yeah, right?
Good.
Yeah,
Okay.
we'll have you all set up.
Okay, hearing nothing, meeting's adjourned. Put your coat on, go someplace.
Thanks, everyone.
Wow.